everybody, and welcome back to what is going to be, well, I think they're all special, but this is leading up to one of my favorite conferences of the year, and we are with my man Dux, and he is going to be there as well. I'm going to be there, and in about a couple weeks here, Dux and I are going to be heading down to the sunny and probably very warm and humid state of Florida, where we will be hanging out at Ignite. And if you're an IT pro, if you're in that profession, it's definitely one of the places you want to be throughout the year. Although I believe Dux, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's sold out. At least part of it is.
It is sold out. So, hey, everybody. Boy, just like Brad, I'm so stoked and excited for Microsoft Ignite. If you've been there in the past couple of years, it's an awesome event. But I think this year will be extra special for all the new things they're going to introduce, obviously, but some of the changes they've done in a good way for Ignite.
Absolutely agree. There's a lot of things moving inside the world of Microsoft. As always, I mean, it's a massive organization of 100,000 plus employees. There's always a lot of things going on, but there's a lot of momentum just around Teams. And I know we talk about it a lot, but it's they announced, what was it? Was it this week? Or maybe, no, it was the end of last week, I believe, that Skype for Business Online and Teams had reached feature parity, at least in their world. I know some people disagree with that, but regardless, Microsoft is starting to look at it and say, hey, look, it's now feature parity. That means they can start actually pushing ahead with Teams, and at some point here in the very near future, it will actually overtake Skype for Business Online in terms of functionality. So that will be something to watch for down in Orlando.
So Brad, if you had a crystal ball, when do you think Skype for Business Online officially would be deprecated or gone?
That is a very I wish that I had some crystal ball. I have asked Microsoft actually twice now, especially when that announcement came out, and they are not saying and there's a couple reasons why, Dux, and you probably know this extremely well. There's some very large companies who are very deeply embedded in Skype for Business Online, and they are not moving anytime soon. And so Microsoft isn't officially saying, but I would think in about 2 years we will know very clearly how this product is going to be phased out, which means if you aren't thinking about transitioning, you're going to have to here in the near future.
Right. And things like, I'm still thinking about capabilities like Skype broadcast, right? Mm-hmm. Is that part of Skype for Business Online? Is it its own thing? Because I haven't seen anything around anonymous access or like a GoToMeeting capability, which Skype broadcast fulfills. I don't see that in Teams just yet.
Yep, and that is one of our biggest challenges, at least from our company's perspective with Teams. It's a great product, and I absolutely believe it's going in the right direction, but our biggest challenge is, Dux, this is a perfect example, is the vast majority of our interactions are with people outside the company. We use a lot of contractors, a lot of freelancers, and trying to bring them all into Teams is still a pretty significant challenge. And so this is me being very wishful. I do hope at some point down the road that you will actually be able to use Skype inside of Teams, at least connect with those contacts. If they could enable that functionality, I know they would have to put some barriers in place for security reasons, and I fully understand and respect that. But that would make my life a million times easier, because right now we have to juggle using Teams, using Skype, because of, to your point, bringing in those third parties. It's still a little wonky.
Do you think, though, we've come to a point, right? Early on, we're thinking we need this one-stop shop where you can work and collaborate, and certainly Teams is fulfilling that. I'm loving it. But then do you think we're coming to a point where we realize maybe that's just not possible?
Yeah.
It's like this.
It can. You definitely have to worry about things getting bloated. I mean, that's a reality of what Microsoft has to deal with Teams, because as long as you're doing internal company things, you can do just about everything inside of Teams now. And so you can, in effect, get lost inside the application if you aren't careful about where things are located, where chats are going on. It is a very busy application from that aspect. But on the other side, it is kind of nice just to have one app open and be able to navigate all your content rather than be like, oh, is it in the File Explorer? Is it in the OneDrive? Like, you can just go into Teams and you can find it as long as you know your way around.
Sure.
But yeah, you're right. You do have to worry about they could just cram everything in there, and then it just becomes a jumbled mess.
Absolutely. But Ignite, one quick thing for folks watching this, let's say you're not going, even if you're not going, one big change this year, if you haven't caught on to this, is it's going to be streamed live every session or most sessions, and you can sign up on Tech Community. You can watch it and join in the fun as well. And it's free. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, and that's one of the unique things I think Microsoft does for their conferences, as opposed to things like VMworld that happened this week, is Microsoft is very good at taking everything that happens there and eventually just putting it online, if not immediately, like with the live streams. You can always kind of dig through the archives and find all that stuff. The only kind of thing you're lacking in some of those scenarios is that you don't have the actual Q&A after, but that's what...
And you don't get to see Brad, right?
or,
In the flesh.
or Dux, for that matter. So, Dux, let's just talk about Ignite here for a second. There's going to be a lot of people going there, thousands of our closest friends and family and all that good stuff. What is your strategy when you approach a conference of this size with this many sessions to make sure that you get the most out of it? Because a lot of these people, their company's paying for them to go. And it's not a
100%.
vacation by any means. They got to go there and learn. What is your strategy for when you go to a conference like this?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I've been in this industry over 15, 16 years, apart from all the Ignites I've been to, SharePoint Conference, Tech Eds, Inspires. Really, there's three things starting today I suggest everybody should do, especially if you're going to Ignite, right? So number one, sit down and think about what you want to get out of it. Like Brad says, your company's paying for your trip. Is it building more relationships and expand your network? Obviously, I don't have to say it. You need to learn. You need to look at what the new things Microsoft has to offer and how you can take advantage for your organization. And third is, personally, I would love to learn about things that's outside of my comfort zone or outside of what I do day in, day out. So think about what do you want to get out of it, right? Is it learning? Is it networking or new things you want to learn? As you write that down, and then you go to the Ignite site and then start looking at sessions. I highly suggest that you overschedule. You start signing up, and not necessarily because the sessions will be, ultra packed that you can't get in, but you now have a way to kind of organize yourself in line with your goals.
That's smart.
Yeah, and then second, start connecting with people today with the power of technology, with the power of social, for that matter, LinkedIn, Twitter, even in tech community alone. Go and look for people, not necessarily just industry people, Microsoft people, but even peers going to Ignite. Update your My Ignite profile, and you get to see, as long as people allow that their profile to be displayed, who's going, and start connecting with them. Start planning. Now, especially if you're going alone by yourself, don't think, oh, I don't know anybody. I don't know if I'll have fun or enjoy or learn. Start making those relationships and building it right now. And then third, I would say is, if you're not on Twitter, sign up, because more and more, especially with conferences, that is like the way to get plugged in, what's going on before, during, and after, and follow the hashtag MSIgnite. So those are my 3 tips for everybody, especially as we prepare for this journey and experience Ignite.
I fully agree with all of that. Obviously, when I go to conferences, it's a little bit different than probably say when you go and you speak and you do a lot of that stuff. When I actually do go to a fair number of sessions, mostly because I'm looking for the information in between the weeds that Microsoft hasn't announced yet. But to your point, there's a lot of prep work that has to go into this. I already have a couple sessions that I'm going to be attending. We're doing a bunch of podcasting, a bunch of on-site events. But then there's the crucial aspect for me, and it's what you hit on last, and I almost think that this is the most important part, is the networking. Because if you're not connecting with people, it's great. Don't get me wrong. It is absolutely valuable to go to a session and to sit there and learn what Microsoft is talking about. But in Orlando, at this event, there will be several thousands of your peers dealing with the same problems that you are going to have at some point in your career. And the most valuable thing you can do is to have a network of people. So when it hits the fan, you can reach out and be like, look, has anybody ever seen this before? And these are that is the most valuable aspect to me at these conferences, because you're with the people who are dealing with the same problems you are day in, day out.
And I got to tell you, because of what Microsoft has invested in, other than beyond just Ignite, right? So for example, tech community. Once Ignite is done, sure, you can find all the content tech community, but even better, you can continue that connection, engagement, conversation on tech community or social. So don't think of it as just a one-time event. If this is your first time, think of it this is as a jumping board to establish those networks and relationship that you can continue to flourish and foster even after Ignite.
And the other thing I would point out is, don't feel discouraged if you missed out on something at Ignite, because these sessions will fill up and everything else. And that's why I think Duck's point of over scheduling yourself is super important, that if you go to a session and it's filled, you want to have a backup plan. You don't want to just be sitting there looking and twiddling your thumbs and be like, let's make sure you get the most out of it, because there is so much going on, including some things in the evening. Isn't that correct, Mr. Ducks?
That's right. So this is another very, very important point is while during the day, you have all the sessions and professional networking, the other half of the event is at night. There's going to be tons of after-hour events and parties, but I got to tell you got to pace yourself. I've known people who just go at it starting on Sunday night and Monday night, and come Tuesday, they're already done, right? Mm-hmm. So slow down, be selective. And again, this is, while an opportunity for you to have fun and party, it's yet another way to network. You get to meet people and really build those personal interactions. So for example, for us, we're throwing a very epic party. It's called the AppPoint Red Party. If you guys aren't familiar with this, we've been doing this year after year, and we have great fun. Just check out the AppPoint Twitter account to see how you can get involved and be a part of this party. So definitely, it's going to be a lot of fun.
And he's not kidding, folks. It always is. It's always there's always going to be people talking about it the next day. It's that kind.
And then speaking of scheduling too, right? If you need backup sessions, shameless plug, I've got 3 sessions going. I got a session on Teams governance. We talked about Teams, so make sure you check out my session on how you make it easy for your organization to take advantage of Teams and use it the right way. So I have a session on that, Teams governance. I have another session on first line workers. So if you're a large organization, you got folks in the front line serving customers. I'm going to talk about how you can take advantage of your Microsoft investment so that your first-line worker colleagues can make the most out of it. And then last but not the least, don't laugh, Brad, but I do have a session on how to be a rock star public speaker in 5 steps. And so far, that session, with my 2 other sessions, that session has the most registration so far. How to be a rock star public speaker.
There's a couple things. One, you talk about first-line workers. This is Microsoft's. It wasn't in the show notes, but Microsoft's latest first-line worker tablet, the Surface Go. You guys can check that out. There's a review on Petri if you're really super interested about a first-line worker. But the rockstar speaking thing, I totally get why that fills up first, though, because, one, if people look at you, Ducks, and they say, you're a good speaker, which I fully agree that you are, they want to go and learn what you know about public speaking, because it's not really an easy trait. And even when we get people on this podcast who aren't typical speakers or podcasters, even doing something like this where it's natural and engaging is not always easy. And I'm not trying to toot our own horns here, but if you're going to learn about public speaking, you could do a lot worse than learning from Ducks. I mean, he's pretty good. And the fact that Microsoft is letting you speak at not 1, but 2, but 3 sessions goes to show that you not only know what you're talking about, but you can do it in a way that's meaningful and engaging.
Thank you. But in all seriousness, though, especially in this age of digital transformation, where adoption and change management is critical, obviously training is critical, engaging with your audience is critical, more and more knowledge like this. And I'm just going to share practical tips, right? Look, I'm coming from a perspective of an IT pro. I'll talk about, my journey into being out there speaking with people. While I can code, boy, there was a time that I don't want to be in front of more than 2 people, right? So how do we overcome that? But more importantly, how do we take it up a notch for people to engage? And once people engage, they learn a whole lot more.
Yep. Public speaking is, especially if you want your career, well, I shouldn't say that holistically, but if you're moving up the ladder and you want to move up the ladder, you're going to be at the front of the boardroom. You're going to be at the front of the meeting head with that PowerPoint presentation, and being able to do that even in a small group is a very valuable skill that management always will recognize. That says, hey, this person can stand in front of a group, talk cohesively, and clearly enunciate their point, and that's a huge thing. It really is. Awesome.
Can't wait to see you there, buddy.
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
I'm looking forward to this one. Ignite is always a fun conference. I mean, well, Dux, you know this very well too. It's almost like a high school reunion every time we go to one of these conferences, because, well, I'll see Dux there, I'll see Paul Throut, I'll see Mary Jo, and I only see these people at these events sprinkled throughout the year. So it's always a good time.
It's like high school reunion, Woodstock, and Burning Man all together.
Yep.
For tech people.
Yep. Yep. And so kind of moving on here, actually talking about meetings, Microsoft announced this week, which I actually thought was a little surprising, some SharePoint and OneDrive announcements. I figured, and this is what's making me more excited about Ignite, if Microsoft is announcing this stuff this week, I think they've got some bigger things hopefully up their sleeve for Ignite. But coming this later this year to OneDrive and Office.com, a new files view that will recommend documents and other forms of content. So this is basically smart curation of your content. Deluxe, maybe I'm getting the wrong product, but this kind of sounds like what Delve was, but now they're kind of just building it into other products. Does that sound about right?
100%. It's so essentially powered by the Microsoft Graph. I mean, if you're in Office 365 that you use in the enterprise, especially those taking advantage of Delve. So we're used to this now, right? So for those not familiar, Delve is a AI-powered technology that would recommend content and people that may be relevant to you within your network. And obviously, it respects security. You're only supposed to see what you're supposed to see. But yeah, these capabilities would now be essentially available in their consumer versions of Office 365, Office.com.
Yeah, that's going to be super helpful. Other things that are coming, I think this one is probably the biggest announcement. Microsoft says later this year, automated transcription services will be natively available for video, audio files in OneDrive and SharePoint. And the reason why I think this is so big is there's so much content in video, especially because we're making more and more videos, such as this podcast. Being able to search that basically seamlessly, because you put the product in there, it gets transcribed, then it becomes indexed, and then it becomes searchable. I think this is going to be a huge feature for Microsoft.
Absolutely, because today, right, if you think about video and audio content, if you run a search, it's just going to search against the metadata, the title, the author, some keywords, but it's not going to search in context of what was said in the video. So, for example, we use internally, we use videos a lot here at AppPoint for our training, for our town halls, for our meetings. And the ability, let's say, if I missed a meeting and I want to tune in, but I don't have 1 hour to listen to the entire meeting, I just run a search, just jump to the point of the meeting where that word was said or that conversation happened. That's huge. In fact, we're using that today through Microsoft Stream. In Teams, there's the capability now we record a meeting and it transcribes it. So, boy, I'm sure they're using that same technology for OneDrive Consumer for videos and sound files.
Yeah, and this is, in my opinion, one of the big differentiators about why Microsoft is continuously going to win in the enterprise. It's very hard for a company. Don't get me wrong, I like Dropbox and I like those guys, but Microsoft has this massive stack of technology that they can just be like, you know what, we're just going to throw this in there. And then it just enables it. They don't have to develop the technology outside of the product. It's just something that they're doing, and they're applying it to their other portfolio products. It's great.
And even this is a use case where you can't argue the power of the cloud, right? So a lot of times there's still some customers that would say, the cloud is just moving data and sticking your infrastructure in the cloud instead of my own data center. But for use cases like this, there's no way, unless you have endless resources and money and people, to build this on premises. So this is the next wave of the promise of the cloud. As Satya always talks about the intelligent cloud, this is it, right? This is the epitome of the intelligent cloud.
Yeah, it goes back to a lot of people just think of cloud as storage. They don't think of it as on-demand compute, and and this is a perfect example of how that cloud brings real benefit. And then the third thing that they announced, well, they announced a couple things, but the third major thing, and I think this is kind of neat, a new feature again coming down the pipeline, is a way to share content with people who are attending a meeting with you. So if you're in a meeting and you show off a PowerPoint, it's going to now intelligently recommend that you share that PowerPoint with the people in your meeting. It's just going to be a click of a button, and this seems so kind of crazy that it never existed, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Oftentimes you go to a meeting, and look, I'm sure it's not just me. I'm sure everybody's like this. You have this great intent. I'm going to prepare my PowerPoint 2 days before. I'm going to share it so people can look at it, get ready. No, never happens, right? Yep. You always finish your presentation maybe 2 minutes before the meeting itself. And then once the meeting is done, people don't get it. Or, you share the link to that PowerPoint, but you forget to set the permissions. So I think the ability to easily do this is going to be huge.
I think so, too. And again, it just kind of builds on the intelligent nature of what Microsoft is pushing out there. And the nice thing about this specific feature, while it's obviously not going to change the world in anything, Microsoft always talks about their AI and learning capabilities, and it's sometimes a little hard to see where that gets applied. But here's a perfect example of how they're doing it with the intelligent searching of content, the transcriptions, and then this meeting stuff. It's all just, you can see those pieces finally hitting the end user that once just lived way up in the dream world. So it's kind of neat.
Well, there's this one AI tool that it's already there. I don't think people know about this. Do you know about Calendar Help?
No, I don't.
Dude, this is a life changer. So you go to calendar.help. It's part of Office 365.
Mm-hmm.
And once you enable it in your tenant, let's say I want to schedule a meeting with you and Mary Jo and Paul. I'll send an email, right? Hey guys, let's meet next week. Now we play the game of figuring out the time. But then what I could do is I can CC Cortana in my email, Cortana@apppoint.com, because I turn on Calendar Help. I can say, hey Cortana, can you help us schedule this meeting for next week? And then I just leave it alone. So now Cortana, even though you're external to my company, would talk to you separately and figure out the time for all of us to meet and then schedule the meeting. Is that insane?
That is. I mean, that's actually great. Interesting.
Yeah, so it's called later. Go to calendar.help and you can enable this on your tenant.
Very cool. Speaking of calendars, Doug, perfect segue. We did get a reader question in, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but at a high level, Dux, how do you stay organized? What apps are you using?
Sure. All right, let me share 3 things that I do religiously every day to stay organized, right? So number 1, I live on Microsoft To Do. Shout out to my good buddy, Laura Butler, with the To Do, Notes, and Task team. I think To Do is a phenomenal app for a couple reasons. It's easy to use. The mobile app is really easy, and everything I put there shows up in Outlook, which is great because when I come to work on my computer, I use Outlook.
Yep.
So that's the first thing, Microsoft To Do. The second thing I do is I have an effective way to manage my email. I'm sure, as a lot of you know, email is going crazier and crazier every single day. So I use this technology. I've been using it for the last 5 years. It's a technology called SaneBox. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. But what it is, it's actually AI powered and learns your behaviors with email. It's only going to keep important emails in your inbox. And everything else would go to another folder called Sane Later, which you can triage later. So I just focus on my inbox, most of the day. And at the end of the day, I look at that other folder called Sane Later, which, I can answer later on. So I use that tool, SaneBox. Awesome. And the third thing I do, frankly, is if I want to, in this part organization, reach out to somebody and get immediate response and not wait for too long, I don't use email. Obviously internally I use tools like Teams for quick messaging, but then externally I rely on a lot of the social tools to do this because they have messaging capabilities like LinkedIn or Twitter. I mean, me and Brad, we talk on Twitter direct messaging versus email. Yep. So that helps me organizes my communications better with key people. I mean, I don't overdo it. But that way it keeps my sanity because above all that, I still need to focus on actual things I need to produce and deliverables, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And for those curious, both Dux and I will obviously be at Ignite, and our plan is to actually do this podcast from down there. We should be in the Pop-Up Podcast, which is going to be a new venue. Microsoft is kind of really changing up their podcast stuff this year about where it is. I believe it's actually in the center of the hall. So you'll probably see us maybe sitting in, Paul and I right now effectively refer to it as the gerbil cage because we haven't actually seen it, but they described it to us as 3 plexiglass walls with a stage or a booth set up that we can then do it directly from the show floor, which will be kind of interesting.
We should invite people and do maybe a prize drawing so you get a good crowd, right?
Yeah, it'll be a fun time. Look for that on Tuesday afternoon. I believe it'll actually be in the session catalog, so you can actually add that to your sessions. And Dux, before we wrap it down today, you got anything else for us?
Boy, so much goodness going on, but look, with Ignite coming up, with all these new technologies coming up, and summer's over, I would just say that make sure you guys stay tuned to all the stuff we're doing here at AppPoint, at Ignite for all of our sessions. the red party. And one more thing I didn't mention, I think this would be my takeaway for the show is just like every year, we're gonna give away a Ducati. So come by and see us and get a chance to win a Ducati.
You could literally ride home.
You can ride home out to the sunset. Very dramatic.
Very, very cool. I am looking forward to Ignite. I don't think Dux and I can stress enough that training is typically expensive, and Microsoft is going to be throwing all this stuff up on the web for free. So make sure to take advantage of it, because there's no better way to make your boss happy and be like, look, I learned something new. And they will love you, and we will love you too. So, folks, that wraps it up for today. We will be back. Look for us at Ignite. We'll be walking the show floor. And have yourselves a wonderful day, and we'll catch you right back here next time on the Enterprise Dish.
Bye.